Hi there, it's Belle, back in the Sky News Daily Studio. In a minute, I'm going to introduce you to two fathers I had the pleasure of meeting over 2.5 years ago. Historical context, well, that would have them hate each other. One is Israeli, the other one Palestinian. Each lost a young daughter, killed by the other side. If anyone knows how it feels to be a bereaved Israeli, a bereaved Palestinian now, it's them. But Rami and Bassam call each other brothers. They're united in their grief and in what they've done with it.
We share the same kind of values. We care about human beings as human beings. We care about Israelis as we care about the Palestinians.
You have to take your anger and your rage and your frustration to a positive place. What are you going to do with this energy, which is a kind of a nuclear energy, the anger, the pain? And you can use it in order to bring darkness and destruction and death to people, and you can use it in another way, to bring hope and warmth.
More from Rami and Bassam in a moment. But first, a scoop by our international affairs editor, Dominic Waghorn. He's the first journalist since October the 7th, which is, of course, when this latest violence started, to sit down with a member of the Qatari hostage negotiating team. Let's begin with how it works. It's quite hard, I think, for those of us who've not been involved in any sort of hostage negotiation or who've watched them on TV dramas to try and imagine how it works. What's the sort of mechanics of a hostage negotiation in this circumstance? Who's in what room where?
It's a very good question, and the Qataris are not giving a lot away because they say it's a very delicate moment in the negotiations. But what they have is this position they've kind of got themselves into, where they are mediators not just in this conflict, they were mediators in the transfer of orphans and children in Ukraine and Russia. They've also been involved in the transfer of American hostages back from Iran to America. So they've got themselves in this position where they are in a very central role in terms of mediation. And what they're saying about what's going on in Gaza is that they are talking to Hamas and to Israel, a country they don't actually have diplomatic relations with. And they say that the good thing is that negotiations are continuing. And what they're saying is that even though there is zero confidence between both sides, between Israel and Hamas, obviously, and even though the talks are very hard going and very, very challenging and complicated, they still think there's now the chance, having had those 4 hostages released already, of greater progress. And they're now talking about the possibility of all these civilians being released in the coming days. But with a major caveat, they're saying that won't happen unless there is a pause in the violence.
If there's a continuing bombing, if there is a continuing escalation in the situation, our task is getting more difficult. The mediators need a period of calm, needs a situation where we can speak easily to both parts and try to be more creative in bringing more initiatives that can get those civilians out.
So what they're saying really is Israel has to stop its aerial bombardment of Gaza. Hamas has got to stop firing its rockets. And if there is a pause, then there's the possibility of getting all these civilians out. And one of the main reasons for that is that they're saying that Hamas is saying they don't really know exactly where all the hostages are. It's difficult to get to them while the bombardment is going on. That is one problem. The other problem is that whenever the Israelis bomb as aggressively as they are, then it's impossible to come up with a logical, creative solution because emotions are so running so high. So the impression, reading between the lines, every time there's a serious bombing, a serious amount of deaths, Hamas saying that hundreds died overnight and the night before, then it's very hard for a logical, rational conversation to happen. So they need a pause, they're saying. If that pause does happen, though, they believe that all these civilians can be got out of Gaza. Completely different question in terms of Israeli military hostages, the soldiers that Hamas has taken. They've made it pretty clear they're going to keep them. They're going to try and exchange them for all the 6,000 Palestinian prisoners in Israeli jails.
Let's talk about Qatar's role. Qatar has become the kind of mediator in all of this, in part because of its role funding the governance of Gaza.
Yeah, so Qatar is in a situation where it was encouraged by America with the blessing of Israel to have Hamas set up a political office in Qatar. And that office allows the Qataris to funnel aid into Gaza that Hamas controls, and also has allowed Qatar to maintain diplomatic contacts with Hamas and therefore keep those lines of communication open. And what the Qataris are saying is that from their unique position of being able to, they are really the only country that's able to talk to all the parties in this conflict, the Israelis, all the different countries involved, all those countries who have hostages in Gaza. From that unique position, looking at what's going on the ground in Gaza as well, they are very worried about the humanitarian situation, which they described as very critical, saying it's essential that aid is able to get in. They say if that doesn't get extended, then there will be a disaster in Gaza. So a warning there from Qatari saying it's not just in terms of negotiations that this pause needs to happen, but there does need to be a pause in the fighting for humanitarian reasons too.
It's a really delicate balance, isn't it, for Qatar to strike? Because, as you said at the beginning there, they don't have diplomatic relations with Israel at the moment. Are they seen as a credible actor by the Israelis?
They are the conduit through which aid and funding and salaries are paid to those civil servants in Gaza, and the aid that Qatar wants to get in, and also other players want to get into Gaza. They are the conduit through which that money is paid. They're not directly funding Hamas as an organisation that America and Britain regard as a terrorist organisation, but they do have an important role to play. I mean, a uniquely important role to play. And in terms of the way the Israelis regard Qatar, there's been a lot in the social media and online criticising Qatar, saying it's harbouring terrorists. Well, this was Zaki Hanegbi, the Israeli National Security Advisor, yesterday, saying on Twitter, "I'm pleased to say that Qatar is becoming an essential party and stakeholder in the facilitation of humanitarian solutions. Qatar's diplomatic efforts are crucial at this time." So that's recognition, I think, of the crucial role Qatar is playing, particularly in terms of the hostage negotiations that Israel sees as important. Other wings of Israeli politics, but I think also within the Israeli government, have been critical of Qatar, playing, I think, to a domestic audience in Israel. But I think officially that is the official line, that Qatar remains very, very useful and playing this essential role as a sort of line of communication with Hamas. And if there's going to be a way out of this, it will be, they are saying at least, through a diplomatic process.
Thanks so much, Dom. We'll be back in a second. I met Rami and Bassam in the relatively calmer times of 2021, but the conflict has darkened their worlds forever. In 1997, Rami's daughter Smadar was 14 years old when she was killed in a suicide bombing. She was out shopping with friends. 10 years later, Bassam's 10-year-old daughter Abir was shot in the head with a plastic bullet by an Israeli border police officer outside her school on the West Bank. She was buying sweets. Rami and Bassam first met through an organisation of former fighters, now fighting for peace. They know what it feels like to lose a child in this conflict.
Well, your world is collapsing instantly. The feelings are in a range from anger to despair and an urge to do something about it.
That's Rami Elhanan. He lives in Jerusalem.
You don't know how you survive every minute after that. You are thinking that you are going to die in any moment. It's unbearable pain. You lose your heart. Of course, anger in the first place. And I am continue to be angry up to date. We must be angry because we are human beings. It's how to use this anger after that.
And that's Bassam Aramin. He lives in the Palestinian city of Jericho in the West Bank. Rami, how did you take that path from anger, from revenge, towards something more constructive?
First, I tried to ignore it. I tried to pretend as if nothing ever happened. I tried to get back to my studio. I'm a graphic designer. It was very foolish and very naive. It took me almost a year until I met the founder of the Parent Circle. And he invited me over to watch a meeting of this group of crazy people. And this meeting changed my life.
This group was the Parent Circle, right?
Yeah.
Which is a group of bereaved parents on both sides of the conflict.
It's a group of about 600 families, Israelis and Palestinians. It's not a psychological support group. You don't hug each other and kiss each other and eat hummus together. It's the understanding that you have to take your anger and your rage and your frustration to a positive place. What are you going to do with this energy, which is a kind of a nuclear energy, the anger, the pain? And you can use it in order to bring darkness and destruction and death to people. And you can use it in another way, to bring hope and warmth
Bassam, your story was different and your pathway towards peace or finding peace different as well, because you had been a member of the Palestinian armed resistance. You were spending time in an Israeli prison. Tell us about the film that you saw when you were in that prison and what it made you feel.
In fact, I wasn't part of the armed Palestinian struggle. I was 17 years old kid. I was raising the Palestinian flag with other 4 kids at night because it was a crime at that time. And our goal was to insult the Israeli soldiers or when they come to our village.
Even that is interesting because I've read that you were an armed Palestinian fighter. And actually what you're saying is you were a child hurling insults, just insults at soldiers.
I never harmed anyone in my life, not an Israeli and not a Palestinian. But this is the situation. Because I spent 7 years in jail, I watched a movie about the Holocaust. I don't know anything about the Holocaust, except someone called Hitler. But because I was in jail, I want to enjoy seeing this movie as kind of revenge, to enjoy seeing how this great Hitler killed them, punished them. So what happened after that, I cannot imagine that this is a real thing, because I find myself crying, get sympathy with those innocent people. I decided that I want to know more about this movie. And before 12 years, in fact, I make my master's degree about the Holocaust in Bradford University in the UK. I discovered that, in fact, we become the victim of the victim. We paid the price of this crime against the Jewish people. So it was for me the new weapon that I have. It's the education, it's the information to discover that your enemy is exactly like you. We have a common enemy, which is prevent us even to learn how to love each other, which is the occupation. It's a military, direct, brutal occupation. We are in a total cutoff. We cannot meet each other as human beings because of the checkpoints, the 10 meters high separation wall. We need to share this land as 1 state or 2 states or 5 states. Otherwise, we will share it as 2 big graves.
Rami, tell us how it is in Israel. We've just had Bassam use words like occupation. Is that used in Israeli education?
We are talking about 2 societies at war. And these 2 societies need to prepare the young generation to be able to sacrifice themselves as freedom fighters or as soldiers, as war criminals, define what you like. And the only way to do that is demonizing the other side. I was 47 years old when I met Palestinians for the first time in my life, and I'm still ashamed that it took me so long to overcome the Israeli upbringing, brainwashing educational system. And ever since then, which was 25 years ago, I'm in the middle of a journey towards Bassam, towards his story, towards his music, towards his food, towards his culture, and which was deliberately hidden from me.
It may only be 100 miles separating you, but what is life like right now in the West Bank? If you decided you did want to go and see Rami in Haifa, would that be possible?
Unfortunately, no, at all. In the last 2 weeks, 104 Palestinians up to now have been killed in those 2 weeks, only in the West Bank. You will never understand until you see with your own eyes. It's unbelievable. You know, to see a few young people demonstrate, they are very angry with what happened in Gaza from a distance of 300 meters. And to shoot someone in his chest, in his head, it's unbelievable. They are not threat at all.
Rami, what is the mood like amongst the Israelis you talk to?
I'm afraid the situation is just another round in an endless cycle of violence. What is different now is that Israel had such a blow with such intensity, with such cruelty, that people are losing their minds and they are crazy out of anger and the will to revenge, and they have a very easy finger on the trigger, and they shoot everything that moves. Not only that, everyone that speaks out, everyone that remind the Israelis that they don't have to look at the reality through the narrow keyhole of the last event. They, if you're a student, they will expel you from the university. If you're working somewhere, they will push you out of work just for a post on Facebook.
Does that same attitude that you talk about, it has hit us in the West as well. When we look at the way the international community now is responding, but the EU is debating its response today. The UN failed to reach an agreement. They're arguing about the wording of a humanitarian ceasefire versus a humanitarian pause. Bassam, I imagine you know people in Gaza. How does that make you feel, arguing over those words?
It's not only when I watch the people of Gaza, I watch the people of Sderot. To see like civilians, sometimes you have no words to describe that. When it's come to the international community, unfortunately, they are not helping us. They are just investing more blood in our region for their own interests. They don't care about the Palestinians and the Israelis. And I'm sorry to say that. For that, I said to the Israelis, it's up to us. Let us wake up and live on this land. We can do it.
Rami, here in the West, we also hear this phrase repeated by our leaders again and again since October the 7th. We support Israel's right to defend itself. What do you make of this word defence in relation to what we're seeing unfold now in Gaza? Is that defence?
Of course, Israel has the right to defend itself. How do you defend itself? By creating more victims, more babies dead, and put the seed of anger and hatred in the next generation. I'm devastated. I'm in deep depression. The feeling is that everything that we did for the last 20 years is erased in 1 second because of this madness. The solution is to give some kind of hope to people, to look into the future, not to the past. And we always say, don't be pro-Israeli and don't be pro-Palestinian. Be pro-peace. Be against injustice. Be against this ongoing situation in which one people is dominating the other.
Let's talk about that piece. Does it mean going back to the 1967 Oslo Accord lines? Does it mean I can see, Rami, you're laughing as I ask this question. Go on, why are you laughing?
Because this is the $60,000 question and everybody want to know the answer. And it's so stupid, forgive me. I mean,
no, go ahead.
At the parent circles, we are not drawing lines on maps and we are not phrasing articles of peace agreements. The solution is on the table, waiting to be signed, and everybody knows exactly what should be done in order to finish this conflict tomorrow morning. It has many, many names. You can call it the Geneva Accord, you can call it the Saudi Initiative, whatever you like. I will tell you a secret. It doesn't really matter. We can have one state, or we can have two states, or we can have 10,000 states. Whatever we have, one word is essential. And without it, nothing will happen. The word is respect. And you have to be able to respect the guy next to you exactly as you want to be respected. The happiest day of my life will be when Mr. Bassam Aramin, my brother, will be the president, the emperor, the king, the whatever you want, we re-elected forever. It's not important anymore when you respect him.
Thank you, brother, but I really have no time to this job.
Oh, Bassam, you have an amazing straight face when you make jokes. It's almost unsettling. Bassam, tell me about this respect. Tell me about your relationship with Rami.
My relationship with my brother Rami is above any conflict. He's a very noble human being, very noble brother, very noble family, and we share the same kind of values. We care about human beings as human beings. We care about Israelis as we care about the Palestinians. Everyone have the right to exist, to be free, to live in dignity, social justice, safe space, to send his kids to their school and get them back safe. So this is our relationship. We are against atrocities. We are against violence. We are against occupation. We are against injustice. And I want to be respected, as Rami always said.
And Rami, that journey you've been on with Bassam, could you ever have imagined that you would have called Bassam your brother before coming into the parents' circle?
If someone would have told me in my 30s and my 40s that there will be one day that I will lead an organization, any kind of socializing with other people, I would not believe it. I would laugh.
Rami, do you think it's possible to get anywhere near that sort of a peace that you've talked about with an increasingly right-wing government in control?
We need to do a restart, like in a computer. We need to redefine the reasons that we are willing to kill for and die for. We need to rethink our very basic values as Jewish people, as Israelis, as people who survived the Holocaust. I'm a son of a Holocaust survivor. And redefine the reasons that we are killing and dying for. What is the price of having this occupation and continuing dominating another people? And I have the feeling that people are waking up. I look at the polls, I look at Mr. Netanyahu's behavior, I think the Israeli people is waking up to a new dawn of rethinking about the very basic essential of its existence.
Bassam, what about for you? If you had a message for both parts of the entities representing Palestinians, both for the Palestinian National Authority and for Hamas, what would you say to them?
If I talk to the Palestinian Authority and Hamas, we must be one. And this is one of the most painful thing for me as a Palestinian to see two authorities in Gaza and in the West Bank. In the end, our goal is to end the occupation. You talk about the hostages. I want to believe that they are treated in a human way. I hope that very soon they will come back to their beloved one, to their families.
Rami, it's been 26 years since you lost your daughter, Smadar. Do you think of her at times like these?
I think of her 59 seconds out of every minute, 24 hours a day, 365 days in a year, all the time. The pain is there, the wound is open. This is one wound that never heals.
What was she like?
She was amazing. She was an angel. She was very beautiful. She was an excellent student. She was a swimmer. She was a dancer. She played the piano. And everybody used to call her the princess. She was really amazing.
Bassam, what about Abir? Sorry, I always have a rule that I don't get emotional during interviews, but it's very hard not to. Tell us about Abir. You lost her in 2007.
When we lose a family member, we describe him as he was the best. He was very clever. He was unique. For that, we understand the pain that families go through during these terrible times. Always I said she was a very ordinary kid, but she was mine. It's my daughter. This is what I can say now.
Mm-hmm. And I think perhaps, for both of them, they were human. And that's where we end, isn't it? That everybody on each side of this is human. And I think it's incredible what you do. So thank you. And keep that hope, please.
Just to give some hope, maybe in the end, those our grandchildren, Ishai and Jude.
They are beautiful. So I'm seeing a photo held up there by Bassam of the grandchildren of Bassam and Rami, two boys who are hugging each other, one on each side of this conflict, if you want to put it that way. But in the end, what we see is two young children, two boys hugging each other, just two humans. And thank you for being with us on The Daily. We really do appreciate it. Take care.